Before we get started in the class, please join me in invoking Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning. Welcome to our last instructional class. I've started the summarization of the 4 foundations, and we started the first, the foundation of body. And just as a reminder, feelings, mindfulness of mind, and the mindfulness of objects of mind. Excuse my chicken writing. So these are the 4 foundations of mindfulness. It's the part of the Vipassana method of meditation. So it's one of 2 main methods of Buddhist meditation after the Anapanasati, which is mindfulness of breathing. This year we've covered so we've covered, again, we've gone through all of them throughout the year, and so our summarization of last class was for mindfulness of body, and so today I'll do mindfulness of feelings with a little bit of mindfulness of mind, hopefully. Talk for, but since this is our last instructional class, and I won't have time to summarize all of them, since our next class will be our actual half-day retreat on the 11th of October. Strictly just be practical classes. So we'll come in, and we'll just sit for meditation and do walking meditation. And if any basic instructions are needed, and then our Anagataka Quang will provide those, as I will be out of town on a retreat, for the Rains retreat. So, mindfulness of feelings, our favorite type of mindfulness now. Feelings is something we all can... tell me, what kind of feelings do we have? Let me rephrase. What are the main categories of feelings that we have? Which is a what kind of feeling? Negative, terrible, unpleasant, yes?
Positive, neutral, and negative feeling.
Yes, so all of our feelings, there are 3 types of feelings, right? Pleasant, unpleasant, and worries. So in the mindfulness of Satipatthana Sutta, right, exercise 11, is teaching us to identify those feelings. So those feelings of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, as they arise, that we are able to identify them as soon as possible, right? That's the whole idea of our practice, the idea of our mind. And our feelings are no different. because our feelings are the kind of first responders to our thoughts, speech, and actions, right? Typically, before we say something or doing it is, right, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, it may cause a negative or positive or no reaction to speech and action. But in most cases, since we are reactionary beings and we respond according to habits and perceptions and false views and understandings, etc., that we react habitually, sometimes in an incorrect way, right? Go on in the mind, think of the things that you think, things you say, and things you do when we're angry. Most of the time, they're not helpful, right? They're not beneficial. They don't actually do any good for you. They cause you more harm than anything else. But if we're able to be able to become more aware and mindful of those feelings as they arise as quickly as possible, then we have some time, room, to be able to catch those negative or unpleasant feelings before they turn into anything actually harmful. Or at least in meditation, right, when certain feelings arise, we want to be mindful to not necessarily be drowned or terrorized by some of these feelings, right? A lot of times, especially in meditation, a lot of potential negative feelings arise. Negative feelings from past events, from trauma, from unpleasant situations or experiences, right? All these sometimes will come up during meditation. And what people will typically want to do is to reject them, right? To push them aside, to push them back down. Like, no, I don't want to think about you. I don't want to feel you. I don't want you. And attempt to make us not resilient, but to acknowledge that those experiences are there, right? To acknowledge that they're not going to disappear just because we suppress them, just because we reject them a little bit. You want to be able to pet its head, basically, right? Because part of our practice is to, not part of our practice, our entire practice is to eradicate our suffering, right? When we eradicate our suffering so that we can be happy, so we can be free. But in order to do that, in order to attain that, we have to work with suffering, right? We have to be able to care for it. Terrors arise. Literally, think of it as a stray animal. Just you're petting it to make sure that it's not gonna attack you. Because that's sometimes what it feels like, right? When those feelings rise, when those experiences arise, we feel like we're being attacked by our past. We're being attacked by our trauma. We're being attacked by experiences. And so we want to be able to tame that. In order to tame it, we have to do something, right? We can't just reject it. We can't just push it away, right? Because another part of Vipassana meditation, or the foundations, is contemplation. So we have to contemplate these feelings. Why are they arising? From where do they arise? Right? When you're angry, you're not just angry. Anger didn't just show up, right? And so we have to be able to dig deeper into that anger and see see its source, see where it came from. It's only then, when we're able to dig deep and root out that anger and see the true cause of it, then we can say, oh, there you are. And when we can say, oh, there you are, now we have something. We think by suppressing, by rejecting, by pushing it away, by not thinking about it, that gives us a sense of control. But that's not real control, right? That's an illusionary control, because you're not really doing anything except ignoring it. But what happens when, let's say you have a child, for those that have kids, right? What happens when you ignore a 2-year-old yelling at you wanting candy? It's just going to yell longer and harder and louder, right? So our mind is kind of the same thing. And so when we're able to root out that source and see it and say, oh, there you are, and see where it actually comes from, see the root, the core cause of that anger. Sometimes it's to recognize and see it for what it really is. Now you have some true control, because now you can do something about it. Right? Now that you've rooted it out, what are you going to do? Are you going to plant it back in, or are you going to get rid of it? Let's say it's a person, for instance. Usually it's a person. But if it's a person, now you have options. You can, depending on who they are, right? But you can change the type of relationship you have with them. You can change whether you unfriend them or distance yourself from them or remove them from your life completely, whatever it may be, right? But you'll know what needs to be done. But that's kind of the point, right? That's the true learner. So when we're able to actually root out those types of feelings, whatever a feeling may be. It could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be anger, it could be jealousy, it could be whatever it may be, right? All those feelings come from somewhere. Where do they come from? And if you're rooting, you're pushing it away, why? What are you trying to save yourself from? What are you trying to protect yourself from? Yes, ma'am. You have a question? That's why it's a good thing to question ourselves, right? Every time, well, not every time, but when we make big decisions, or any decision, right? Any decision that we make in life, if we're able to ask ourselves or question ourselves and say, is this decision harmful to myself or to others? Because if you're able to question yourself, allow that type of contemplation to occur as soon as possible, then down the line, 2 days from now, 2 months from now, 2 years from now, 2 decades from now, that experience or that situation or that decision that you made will not affect you in a negative way, right? Because if you've asked yourself, is this harmful to myself or to others? And the answer is yes. Then there is no way in the future that decision will ever affect you in a negative way, for the most part. I say that with caution, but for the most part, it causes harm. It will affect you in a negative way, in an unwholesome way. It doesn't matter if it's tomorrow, next year, next century. It could be in your next life, even, right? Or the lives of your children or grandchildren, right? There's an effect. There's always an effect. There's always a cause and effect. I went way off topic. The point it's important to recognize what type of feelings arise, right? Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Because from there, that feelings are, or the sources is either psychological, physiological, or physical, right? If somebody hits you, that's a physical pain, right? If you're anxious, that's a psychological pain, right? Or if you're tired, it's physiological pain. But it all has a source from somewhere, right? And so when we're able to recognize or see that as we contemplate or as we question, then it helps us go into the right direction and pinpoint those broad, right? Anger about what? What kind of anger? Are you angry because someone hit you and you're feeling physical pain? Are you angry because someone insulted you? Are you angry because you didn't get enough sleep? Are you angry because you're hungry? Are you angry because traffic was bad. Why are you angry, right? And so when you're able to do that, then you can, make the list shorter and shorter. Oh, I'm angry because I'm hungry. Well, why are you hungry? Because I didn't eat this morning. Well, why didn't you eat this morning? Because I slept in. Why did you sleep in? Because I slept late. Why did you sleep late? Because I was watching TV. Why are we watching? Right? The list goes on and on and on and on. And then you blame the day or the people or traffic or other and didn't get enough sleep. You didn't have time to eat. Right? And so the quicker or the sooner we're able to catch them, see them for what they really are, and get to the source of those roots or those feelings. Then, when we're, let's say, unpleasant feelings, right? Think of even pleasant feelings. We think that pleasant feelings are good for the most part, right? But pleasant feelings, though in and of themselves are not always necessarily a bad thing, but pleasant feelings can also often turn into something much worse than pleasantness. Think of praise, right? When someone praises you, big-headed. What else? Recognized, seen, right? Right? They give you a sense of importance, sense of power, maybe some harm, because now your mind starts to become a little bit egotistical, a little self-centered, a little high on their mighty horse. Even though those words of praise may have some truth in them, right? Our problem, however, is when praise happens, we typically, and it was like, oh, great Dharma talk, right? If I'm unmindful, then my mind's going to be like, oh, I know it's a great Dharma talk, like, obviously, right? Or I know this information, that's why I'm teaching it, right? I'll get a sense of, I know this. But honestly, when most people come to me, because if I can acknowledge that I don't know everything, which I don't, right? And acknowledge that I could learn more, that I could practice more, that I could study more, then I have room for improvement. But if you think you're the number one in whatever it is that you're being recognized or praised for, then you have no room to grow. You have no room to learn more. You have no room to become better, right? You become stagnant. You become very egotistical of praises, especially those types of praises that may come from flattery, right? Because sometimes some people will just praise you out of flattery, to flatter you, to boost you, right? Because sometimes it's easy. Sometimes we know someone's just saying something just to say it, right? But if we don't, it's because we're attaching to that praise. Whether you're able to recognize that it's purely out of flattery or not, it's because we attach to it. If you have an attachment to something, your mind should blare with bold, big red letters, danger, danger, danger. Right? Could you imagine? Every time you have a desire for something, danger, danger, danger. Oh, I like that. Danger, danger, danger. Maybe one day, right, when we get implants in our head, technology will help us. Huh?
Because nowadays the neuroscience knows which boards or something like that, microboards.
Mm-hmm.
We can observe and that really affects the memory. Make it so
that can happen. Yeah.
That's a $1 billion idea.
I'm gonna trademark it after this class. And then we come to neutral feelings life. Because if we're not necessarily feeling pleasantness or unpleasantness, then we're just feeling neutral, right? We're kind of content with what is or how things are. But neutrality can actually turn into pleasantness. Because if you think of neutrality, what is neutrality, right? But if there's no pain, isn't that pleasant, technically, right? Think of a toothache, right? When you have a toothache, that's an unpleasant feeling, and you're wishing that you didn't have a toothache. You're wishing for the pleasantness of no toothache to happen. And after a couple of days, the toothache goes away, and you're happy again. You're, oh, this is a pleasant feeling. I have no toothache. But then after a week, you forget about it altogether. Now you're back to neutrality. What will take you to have a toothache to feel pleasant about not having a toothache? Impermanence is the most beautiful word to ever exist. But disease, pain, physical pain, mental pain, sadness, whatever it is, right? When you have it, we want it, depending on the time, if it's pleasant, we want more of it. If it's unpleasant, we're averse to it, right? We want to push it away, ignore it, wish it wasn't there. But then when it's, well then, why aren't you still happy? Right? It should be a pleasant one. That's why we're mindful. That's why we stay mindful. Right? That's why when we do walking meditation, we're not just walking. We're being mindful and we're enjoying the walk, being able to enjoy the sensation of our feet touching the ground, right? And the pleasantness of being able to, is it soggy? Is it wet? Is it dry? Right? To be able to make these distinctions is a pleasant feeling. Because there are those that can't make those distinctions, right? Or don't have the ability to. When we're studying in meditation, one of the there was a pleasantness in the unpleasant in meditation. Anger is an easy feeling to recognize. It's an unpleasant feeling, yes? But there's a pleasantness in that because we're able to recognize quickly and easily that feeling of anger. Because it's one of the things that the body responds to in a very physically happens physiologically to the body when we're angry. Body temperature goes up, mouths tremble, you tense up, you can start sweating, right? So there's all these signs when you're sitting in meditation that something is going on, something is wrong, right? And so if you can recognize those and see and ask yourself, why am I tense? Why is my heart rate up? Why is my breathing abnormal? Why am I whatever it is? Then you can point to the mind and see what's going on in the mind. Because the body is giving you signs. The body is saying something. So there's an issue, there's a problem in the mind. So then we go to the mind and we look, right? We're dissecting the mind, we're analyzing the mind. What is happening? What is going on? Where is these physiological changes coming from?
The mind has no control on that because that's not part of the mind. And when the reflex action triggers when something happens, and that the mind doesn't play the role, like we don't have just that point. Even we are aware with full knowledge of that reflex action triggers when into that. I may be wrong.
Don't know. I would have to read a study or something, a research paper on that.
Something like focusing, like balance yourself. Similarly.
Well, because those are what is it called? It's like pain receptors, right? But the pain receptors, though we think, I could be remembering this wrong, that, oh, there's pain here, or something's happening here. But the opposite can also happen, right? It's called something else. It's not called pain receptors, but it's called something else. When the mind is aggravated or agitated, right? Let's say when you're angry, and that changes body temperature, heart rate, et cetera, right? So it works both ways. Because it works both ways, to me, that makes mindfulness a little bit easier.
Yeah, that's called cold blood anger, or cold blood, whatever. Like sudden, I'm having some road rage or something, which is like you have no thing. It's a reflex.
I wouldn't necessarily agree with that, because when you have road rage, again, you should ask yourself why. Sorry?
That's a mind. I don't think it starts with why you in the first place had to get the traffic is there.
Right. The mind has expectations of how the traffic should work. Right? We have an expectation that things should work or should be. And when they're not, right, someone cuts you off, someone uses a blinker, whatever it is, then we start getting angry because our expectations of how they should act were not met.
Do you think you can teach your body to react as soon as that happens? So now your body's on traffic, so now you taught your body out of habit to react that way every time.
Anymore. But I remember a long time ago, before I was a monk, when I was working on it, one of the things that helped me a lot was just reciting mantras, or a mantra, right? And if I would run traffic, because I know something is going to happen. There's no way that you're going to sit in traffic and nothing's going to happen, right? So I'm already pre-planning my road rage. And so when you're sitting in there reciting a mantra, and if something does happen, right, I would just recite the mantra even louder, basically, right, to force myself to recognize what is happening. And if I want to flip someone off, I'm just like, I would stop myself, right? Because that was kind of my go-to, was just to flip people off. But I would train my mind and body to react in a more wholesome way. Or sometimes I would just recite the compassion mantra, the entirety of the compassion mantra. I would do that when I was first learning to memorize the mantra, as I would recite it. Should do summaries more often. Apparently I talk less when I'm summarizing. Questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. I'm saddened that I don't have time to, or availability, I should say, to cover the remaining factors, foundations. One thing I can say at least is appreciate the value of impermanence. Because every feeling that will ever arise, every emotion that will ever arise is impermanent, right? Meaning it will arise, then you endure it, and then it ceases, it goes away, right? That is the fluctuation of everything in life. It comes, it sits, and it goes away, right? It's just a wave. It comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes. And if we are truly able to recognize that, to realize that, right, then whatever does arise will never be able to have control, will not be able to control you. Whatever other feeling that arises will not be able to control you, because it's a momentary feeling. Yes, it may last for a few minutes, maybe a few hours, maybe even a few days, but regardless, it will go away, it will disappear. Because of whatever may be in the past, and it arises now during meditation. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, I'm still angry with this person. Well, that's not true, because an hour ago, when you weren't even thinking about them, you were angry. So you can't still be angry at them. Because if you're still angry, that means it was a continuous feeling of anger. And that's untrue. Right? Things arise and how we endure it and how it ceases to be. And it's really so much simpler to let go, to have equanimity in the mind. Why hang on? Why hang on to anger? Why hang on to anxiety? Why hang on to fear? Why hang on even to happiness? Because happiness itself will also disappear, right? Right? It fluctuates, it comes and goes, and it changes. And if there's change, it means it's impermanent. If it's impermanent, that means you have some sort of potential freedom coming up. That's why I said earlier that impermanence is the most favorite thing in my practice. I love, 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 love that things are impermanent. I love it. How can you not? How can you not love impermanence? It's such a beautiful thing. Because if impermanence didn't exist, then nothing would ever exist. You would not exist without impermanence. Because impermanence means what? That change can occur. Are you the same person you were yesterday? Are you the same person you were last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? See, hatred, greed, joy, are those things stuck, stagnant? No. So why not love impermanence?
One thing you asked, right? And I think the reason is because we as a human, always trying to not live in the present moment, always think in future. Like, okay, I think there's something which is impermanence, and looking for that. And we are not able to contain, or we are not satisfied in the current. We are not even in the current moment. We are not here. We are somewhere else looking some unknown impermanence thing. And that's why we are not happy in the neutral state. Some unknown somewhere, we need to get that. Or we need to go, even though we are sitting here, I think that's like 12:30 somewhere else.
Yeah.
Easier. But we are simply thinking and listening to you.
Right.
But right now, I have to get already pre-planning.
Right.
And that's why everything is good and then we are not happy.
Right. right? It's obsessed with the past, and it's obsessed with the future. Because that's the only time that the mind has control over. Because when you're sitting in meditation, it's like, oh, let's think about that argument we had with our significant other, with our husband or our wife, our kids last week. Or like Renee said, let's think about what I need, my appointment at 12:30, or my lunch, or what I want to eat for dinner tonight, or where I want to go this weekend. And so the mind is always places. It cannot control the present, right? It's the one thing where it cannot control. So it doesn't want you to be there. It doesn't want you to be present, right? Because it has no control over it. Because being in the present means to not think. And so when we're trying to sit and meditate, and the mind's like, no, I don't like this. Let's think about last week. Or let's think about this weekend or next weekend, or a vacation next year, right? And so every time that happens, if you're mindful enough, or if you're unmindful, right, there's a disconnect between mind and body. There's no equanimity there. And so that's our whole practice, is try to pull back, to rein in this uncontrolled mind, to stay here. Because this is the only place we do have control over, or you have full control over. Because you don't have control of the past. Past is the past. It's already happened, right? There's no changing it. It's just wishful thinking. So since we don't have no control of that, the only thing we do have control is how the mind works right here and right now. That's difficult because the mind doesn't want to do that. Which is why we're not the masters of our mind. Because if you were the masters of your mind, then you'd be able to at will to stop thinking about the past and stop thinking about the future and just be here. Be able to stop all negative thinking, all your greed, all your ignorance, all your anxiety. All this you'd be able to control. No, you can't. You have no control. We're not the masters of our mind yet. And so that's why we're in training, right? We're all wearing training wheels with our meditation. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, say again?
You have some kind of steps to get deeper in meditation. Like, for example, and then, okay, you just get like maybe 2 minutes or 1 minute without thinking for seconds. But because, well, right now, every time, well, I got sick, and since then, I cannot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's kind of excuse me, the anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. We use the breath as our anchor, right? We use the breath to focus on our meditation. Because when we first start to meditate, our goal is to be able to develop concentration, right? Because you really can't meditate on the foundations much if you don't have some mastery of concentration, right? You can't think of why your life is suffering if you can't focus on one thing first. Because if you try to sit down and ask yourself, why is my life suffering? Then you're going to start with it, and then now you're hungry, and you have multiple things happening, and now your meditation is wasted. So the first thing we need to do is develop that concentration. And the most traditional way is to meditate on the breath. So it's something that you always have, right? We all have breath. If you don't have breath, then you're dead. And so we use this to focus on what we call the anapana spot, which is the spot right above your upper lip and kind of your nostrils, right? You focus in this spot. So as you breathe in and you breathe out, you feel the air in this anapana spot, right? Anapana means in and out, right? And sati means mindfulness. So anapanasati is mindfulness of breathing. And so you focus. As you breathe in, you're feeling the air going into the spot, right? And you can make mental notes. Is the air cold? Is it coarse, right? Is it subtle, right? You make mental notations of how the breath is. And so that you're only focusing on the breath. Then you just recognize you have a distraction, you come back to the breath, you come back to Anapana, right? You can even, if you don't want to notate the type of breath you have, you can just say in, out, right? Or Anapana, Anapana, right? That's what I do, Anapana, Anapana. One thing, you're still gonna get distracted. It's inevitable, right? It's still gonna happen. But over time, as you start to recognize the distraction sooner and sooner and quicker, the mind will start to get it, right? Because you're training the mind. The mind can be trained. The mind can be changed. And so we do that. It takes months, years. Likewise, the mind is exactly the same thing. Our meditation practice is exactly the same thing. You have to practice over and over and over again. And so today, let's say for the first week, you have 100 distractions. That's fine, right? You recognize them. Next week, you have 99 distractions. That's one less. The week after that, you have 98, 99, 97. Or if you do, they're very short-lived. They're wispy and they're only in the background. They don't actually take over, right? And so you develop your concentration using that method, right? That's one method. There's hundreds of methods you can use. But that's the most traditional way, is to focus on the breath. The other breathing method that I use that's worked for me very well over the years is to follow the breath in the body. Okay, I have a few minutes. In and out, and you do that for 3 to 5 breaths, right? In, out. You physically try to feel the breath, right? You don't make the notation of what kind of breath it is. You just feel the air. Feel the air in this area, right? And you do that for 3 to 5 breaths. Then you move down to your neck. Feel the air go in and out, right? And then go to the lungs. Feel the lungs expand and contract. Feel it. Do that for 3 to 5 breaths, and you feel the whole body being suffused with air. And you go backwards. Body, lungs, neck, back, throat, nose, and you just go repeat that process, right? That is very effective for a lot of people, because instead of just focusing on one spot for the entire meditation, you're moving. If you do one session with just focusing on the breath here, and then do another session with the continuous movement, compare, right? And see which method works for you best. Because no one method is going to work for you. What works for me, it's not going to work for you. Maybe, right? And so this is why we have hundreds of different methods. So you need to experiment and try different things, right? Don't just try it one time and say it didn't work for me. No, we need to do it several times just to make sure, right? Because it could be the time of day, you can be tired, you can have too much energy, you can be distracted. But once you find something that works for you, stick with it and use it. But eventually it may stop working too, which is fine. This is what you want, actually, right? You want a concrete method, right? It's just a tool. The same way you use a screwdriver to screw something in and you put it back in the toolbox, you use it one time for what you need and you put it away, right? So our meditation, the methods or the techniques that we use is the same thing. You're going to use it until it stops working. When it stops working, I mean, that's a kind of a sign. Advanced, yes. So when we come to the foundations of mindfulness, this is technically something we do after we've developed some kind of concentration. Though it does help, right? It's not necessary, but it does help. So for instance, in our last class, when we covered mindfulness of body, one of the exercises, I forget what number exercise it was, but one of the exercises, yes, parts of the body, exercise 7. So parts of the body is when we focus on every piece of our body. So the sutra describes that we start with the hair of our head, right? So you physically want to bring your attention to the hair on top of your head. and you move down, right? Think of your body in slices, right? What is in that slice? So for me, blood vessels, nerves, whatever, and you move to your forehead, move to your eyebrows, your eyelids, eyebrows, eyeballs, ears, right? You're going down in sections. You can put as much detail as you want, or as little detail as you want, as you want, right? But the more detail, the better the practice. But that's also this is moving too, right? So there's little room for distractions to arise because you're fully concentrating on these parts of the body. But anyway, you move all the way down to the soles of your feet and you go up again, right? Depending on how much detail you give yourself. Another good method, another good reason for this method, it's also an alarm. It's an alarm. Let's say you want to sit down for 30 minutes, right? And you do your body scan from top to bottom, and you know this is a 30-minute session. It's just a side note. This is a fun fact, right? So if you want to do 30 minutes, you know how many parts of the body you need to do. If you want to do 45 minutes, you know how many parts of the body. Counting, thank you. I forgot about counting. It's the most basic one. Yeah. Can I ask what your method is? Okay. Mm-hmm.
But I really feel something was opening.
Okay.
I just stayed there very long time. And it was very peaceful, very much quiet the rest of the day.
Mm.
But I just feel like 30 years ago, I had
Meditating is like learning a new language, right? Because when you're learning a new language, the way that you're going to retain that new language is to constantly practice it, right? And if for any moment you stop for a short amount of time or a period of time, then you start to lose some of that fluency in the language, right? And our meditation is the same way. So if you stop for some time, because if whether you got sick or we're in the hospital or whatever it is, and there's a period of time where we've stopped meditating, the mind's gonna start to relax in a way that's kind of, the mind's lazy a little bit. It's like, oh, we're gonna meditate. Like, I don't want to do this. And so something you have to consistently do. But because again, everything's impermanent, everything changes, the method that worked for you before is also subject to impermanence. It's also subject to change. So just because it worked before doesn't mean it's going to continue to work later on. The method you're describing is actually a very good method, right? It's called something, and I can't recall its name, but it's not a simple meditation. It's not considered a yeah, it's not like a beginner type of method. But anyway, you can get back to that, right? And you do want to get back to that. But we have to get the mind rolling in a way. Right? We're just counting the breaths. For every in breath is 1, out breath is 1, in, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. We do that up to 10, and then you repeat again. Or you can reverse count from 1 to 10, then 10 to 1, right? Counting gives us a way to catch ourselves when we're distracted. Because what's going to happen if we're concentrated enough that if we become distracted, we're going to either lose count or we're going to continue the count beyond 10 and become distracted at the same time, right? The mind knows how to multitask. And so it's going to count, but you're going to get distracted. You're going to be like 10, 11. Next thing you know what, you're in the 2000s, right? And so in and of itself, that method has a way to kind of, you have a way to catch your distraction. So counting is also an effective method. But counting, unlike the other methods, gets right. In my meditation book, I have a method called +1, which is to me, it's a method I created. I think I created it. That's very effective. I do. Hold on. I have to draw it out. All the way to 10. I should have written the whole thing out. But anyway, think of each number as a breath, right? So 1 is breathing in, 1 again is breathing out, in, 2, out, 1, in, this is out. 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, and you reset. 1, 2, reset. 1, 2, 3, reset. 1, 2, 3, 4. Up until 10, and then you reverse back. 10 to 1. This is not easy. I hope it makes sense, because I just thought of writing it out. It is very effective because it's literally forcing you to stay concentrated, because you can get lost very easily. You can lose your place or lose your count very easily, right? Because it's not just regular counting, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, this is a repeat and an addition, or it's a reverse and a subtraction. So this is what I do when I do long sessions. So I do like morning meditations, when we do morning meditations, a long session. I always start with this, because this will, not immediately, but by the time but this is my go-to method. Cool. I was trying to say okay and cool at the same time. It's like cool. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do our sit for our sitting meditation, and then we will do walking meditation. not in the zone. Okay. Just as a reminder, this is, again, our last instructional class. Our next class on the 11th will be our retreat day. So I hope everyone will join us. And 4 to 5, we'll have a tea ceremony. So, of course, everyone's welcome to stay for that. That's always fun. And then the second class in December and the 2 classes in November will strictly just be meditation. I've also concluded our Sutra study class. The last class we had last week, or the week before, was technically our second to last on Friday. So we will return with that class and full meditation class next year after the Lunar New Year. So we'll be back in February or March, depending on my mood. Otherwise, it's going to start a big topic tomorrow for Sunday service, but I'm going to first, I'll do that next week actually. So tomorrow will be, maybe, depends on who comes. Otherwise, I'm going to go into a big topic. I won't reveal just yet. I want to keep it as a surprise. I'm going to go through a big topic to leave you guys thinking really hard before I go on my retreat for a couple months. So it gives you something to contemplate on. Otherwise, I think that's all the announcements that we have. We will still, even though we're having it'll be that second Saturday. And that's a full day retreat, so it'll be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That will, the half-day retreat that's coming up will not be instructional in a sense, like our typical retreats. There will only be 2 discussions, 2 Dharma talks, and I'm going to reserve the first one for session for the four foundations. So it won't be necessarily anything new, but more like be all about the 4 foundations, which is usually how I try to work our retreats to integrate in what we've been teaching or learning throughout the year. That's all the announcements I can think of. Right? I'm sorry? I'm so sorry. Repeat your question.
Yes, for retreat, like should she be preparing for retreat, like eating, not eating, and prerequisites for
show up and practice with us. Both retreat, the half-day retreat, we will have a lunch. That'll be our only meal. The full-day retreat, we have 3 meals. But at least for the half-day retreat, since it's later in the day, it's 9 a.m. To me, that's late in the day. But I'll at least have breakfast that day. But for our full-day retreat, we'll have all 3 meals. 1-hour sitting meditation sessions. So it's going to be 4 or 5 sessions. I don't remember what I put on my schedule, but it's meant to be a challenge for you. It's meant to push your practice and push yourself. But the benefit, of practicing in a retreat or with a group is most people don't want to fail in public. Falling asleep, but when you're in public or when you're in a group, you don't typically want that, right? We allow our ego, unfortunately, to kick in. This is the only time where it's okay for the ego to stick its tongue out, as it'll force you to not want to fall asleep or anything. Plus, I come around with my stick and I'll give you a good whack. Sounds difficult, but it's really not. Okay, well then that will conclude our class, and I hope to see everyone tomorrow and or for our retreats coming up. Please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times and transferring the merit. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni Buddha, Namo Shakyamuni. We wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Namo Shakyamuni.